One of the quickest and easiest ways to change the look of your bike is obviously to change the seat. So that's what I'm going to do in this episode. Hi, Tony here. Welcome back to the channel and welcome to the next episode in the Interceptor build. It's been a long time since the last one. I've just had other things going on. I've been waiting for parts and various other bits and pieces. I've been very busy, but I finally got the bits through to be able to do what I think will be the biggest visual change to that bike, and that is to change the seat. Now, it's not going to be just a case of popping this seat off and putting a completely different one on and that's it, because the seat I'm using comes from Sold Out Motorcycles and it's one of their short seat conversions. You can see it's just that little bit shorter than the standard seat, and then to fill that gap in at the back they make a nice little aluminium rack. But in doing so, that means I'm also going to change this tail light, indicators and rear mudguard. So not a particularly involved job. There's it's really just a few nuts and bolts. I think it will really transform the look of the bike. So let's get it inside the workshop and get started. Okay, so bike's in on the ramp. I'm going to keep my hat on because it's not much warmer in the garage here than it is outside. And obviously the first thing to do with this bike is to, after taking the side cover off, get the original seat off. And then I can start looking at the teardown here. Now again, I'm not going to go into loads of detail undoing every single screw. I'll show you where those screws are and what you need to undo. But essentially, what's going to happen is you put a new lash on the front here. This plastic mudguard comes off and gets replaced with a nice brushed aluminium one. You've got a rack that goes on the back here, and a short seat that kind of sits in there. So that gives you an idea of what we're going to do in terms of neatening that bit up. Then it's getting this lot off. So first things first is to get this rear light cluster off and get the mudguard out of the way, and then we can crack on. To get the mudguard loose, undo these two 10mm bolts at the back. So at the back here is the clip for the lights. So just pull that apart. So I've unclipped that, and that means that when I undo these two bolts to take this off, that whole lot can come out in one go. I'm going to replace this anyway. I'm going to make a new one of these so that I don't have to cut any of the original wiring as well. Undo these two bolts to remove the mudguard. That means I can now get access to these clips. So you've got these two, which I believe are the indicators, and this one, which is the tail light. These are always tricky little buggers. If they get a screwdriver under there to... There we go. So with these wires disconnected, this mudguard can come away in one piece and go into the spares box. And then under here, there's two more bolts, which if you undo means that this back end can come off. So this is a 10mm nut on this side, and you need an 8mm spanner or socket on the other side just to get these undone. That whole light cluster should, there you go, lifts off in one go. Another one to go in the spares box, and this is what you're left with on the back. I probably won't need to keep these rubber seals in, but that's where the rear light's going to come through, and the number plate holder and all that sort of stuff goes on. And that's what I really love about these bikes, is that simplicity of the build. Two bolts here, a couple of bolts at the back, that whole lot comes off. There are a couple of other bits and pieces to do, so you've got spacers to go under the latch, and you've got a little latch to fit on the front. You do have to take at the moment the rubber bungs out of the original seat and put those in holes on the bottom for this seat. At the moment, Sold Out don't provide that seat with those rubbers in, but I think that's something that they're looking at. This seat that I've got, the brown one, which is a really nice cross stitch with a little brass kind of head in there, this is a sample. They've lent this to me to be able to do the fitment. They do it in black and brown, ribbed and diamond stitch, and there's an antique brown as well, but this was just a little one-off that I can use to get this on and show you what it's all about. I actually quite like it. I think it goes well with the colour scheme, so it may be that this is the actual one that I'll leave on there. Who knows? Anyway, so that's all that bit done. I'll have a bit of a tidy up, move the cameras around, then we look at what needs to be bolted on next to get the mudguard and all the other bits and pieces in place. Then it's just a bit of wiring, and I'll be able to show you what it looks like. So the sharp-eyed amongst you might notice that I've changed my hat. No, it's not a continuation error. I wrapped up filming at that last part for the evening and I'm back out today, and I realised I was wearing my Arai beanie and not my own Man Cave Moto one, so I thought I'd put this on today. And if you want to get yourself one of these, there is a link in the description to my merch store. Anyway, on with the build, and first of all, a little bit of bad news. As I was clearing away last night, I knocked some of my camera gear over and did this. Normally I do cover my tank when I'm working on it, but in this instance I wasn't really working on the bike. I was moving bits around and being clumsy, and that's what happened. So yeah, I'm a little bit gutted, but I was going to paint the tank anyway, so that's probably just accelerating the process for that. I'll just put a sticker on it or something like that just to cover it over for now. But yeah, a little bit annoyed about that, but you know, these things happen. So let's get on with the video. The teardown is done, and now this is the good bits, because everything that goes onto the bike from this point onwards is new, and you can really start to see that transformation. So let's very quickly look at the parts used to fit this, and obviously you'll see them in more detail as we go through. But you've got a bracket which holds the mudguard on at the back end. You've got a little spacer kit for the rear latch so that that can lift up a little bit to get the seat at the right level. You've got the latch for the front, and there is the rear light and number plate holder with the bolt kits for that. So really simple, everything's organised for you, pretty straightforward. Whilst there is a pretty comprehensive parts list, there are no instructions for this, so you can come on a little bit of a journey with me. First thing I think we'll do is mount the rear fender, and that goes underneath the standard latch here. So 2 4mm Allen key bolts, and then in the kit we have 2 spacers which sit underneath there. Now there is a captive nut on the underside of this, which makes that easier. You can just kind of line that up and get the screw started on. And these bolts are longer, because that means that then once they're through, this part can mount underneath. Okay, so that's in place. Incidentally, these bits which were the original mount we can get rid of, we don't need those. They again go in your spare parts box. That will line up on those 2 bolts, and then just a little nylock nut underneath. But as at this point I can introduce that lovely brushed aluminium mudguard, and you'll see there's 2 bolts that go in there, and then there's another bolt that goes on the end there, and that's the mudguard in place. We'll see that more when we come to do it. I'm not entirely sure if I want to leave this brushed or paint it black. I can decide that at a later stage. For now we'll just leave it. So if you know the bike, you know you've got these 2 holes under here, which is where you would mount the handrail. And what Sold Out Customs have done is made a little bracket which just fits, bolts underneath that, and then you've got the fixings there to bolt the plate onto the top. They do 2 versions of this. You have this one which is just plain, or there's one here that's got a tab on it for an indicator. Now I'm not sure of the measurement of this hole, but this is designed to take Kellerman indicators. I'm using Motogadget Moblaze, which means I'm going to have to drill that out to make that a little bit bigger. When it comes to mounting these, you'll notice that there is an extended part that goes at the back. If you line up that first hole, so if you've got that long bit at the back, you'll know that it will line up with the rack. Set that on, fingers crossed. Yeah, the holes line up, and then there's another set of bolts in the kit which just bolt through into there, but that'll be the last thing to put on, because obviously we've got to put the mudguard and do all the wiring first. Okay, so with these in place, we can now fit the mudguard. I'll just go through there. That's at the back end, and then at this end you've got a big washer, goes through there, and a washer on the back. That's your rear mudguard. It's just a case of obviously fiddling that around, getting it straight, and then tightening everything up. So now we can turn our attention to this front bracket here, which is where this little piece goes. So it is just literally a case of undoing these stock bolts. It's at this point here I would normally put something over the tank, but I've already done that, so let's not worry too much about that. And then this bracket, there are no instructions, but to me, having sat this on, it makes perfect sense just to place that on top, and then you've got the bar from the seat that kind of pushes into there. I guess you could use those same bolts again, but you get a set of domed head ones come in the kit, so I might as well put those in and just snug that down. Doesn't need to be super tight. Okay, so I won't bolt that on just yet. I'll line the holes up so that we can see where it should be. I should now, if I put that pin into that gap there, that should snap down onto there. So there you go. Obviously at the moment it's a little bit wobbly because I haven't taken the rubber mounts off of the original seat to go on here. So obviously once those rubber mounts are on the bottom, it will push in. I think it looks pretty good. The short seat kind of visually shortens the whole bike, and we'll see that when we get it outside once I've finished the full install. But you've got that benefit of having that kind of shorter custom look without having to cut the frame rail. Now at some stage I might actually cut this rail and put the shorter loop in, so the loop just sits behind here, and obviously shortens everything down at the back. But I think you've got a really good looking kind of piece here without the trouble of going to that. And if you do want to go back to stock, which is what I've done with all of this project, is nothing has been cut or removed from the bike, so it can be returned to stock pretty easily. I'm quite happy with it so far. It's been pretty straightforward. Got to take those rubbers off and do that, but we'll do that later on. So that means we're on the last stretch, and all we have to do is put the rear number plate mount on here, mount the light and the indicators, wire those in, and we're done. So these are the indicators that I've chosen. Actually, if I put my hand there, you better see those better. These are the Motogadget Mo Blaze. Tiny little things. Once you bolt them in, it's essentially just that bolt head that sticks out. Even to the point that I think they might be too narrow when they stick out of here. They're not out far enough, so I might need a little stalk to put them on. But I have connected these up to test, and they're incredibly bright. I've already drilled this hole out to 9mm to be able to accept these. I've just got to finish it off properly and put a bit of paint in there so that it doesn't go rusty. But I'll do that at the end. For the purposes of making this a bit quicker, I'll leave it as it is for now when I mount these. With the indicator facing backwards, it's just a tiny little thing. I'll just put the nuts on the back, and then this wire I can feed up above this, and obviously neaten that up as and when I do the wiring for the rest of it. But that works pretty well. One thing you will notice about these lights is there are more than just two wires coming from them. That's because these can be wired up as turn signals, rear lights and brake lights. So they're a three-way light if you wanted to go with that. And initially that was one thing I was looking at, is mounting these either side of the number plate and not having a rear light. But I wasn't quite sure whether that was the look that I was going for. So I can just wire these up with the two of these as indicators, and we're good to go. So I'll feed the other one through the other side and then we'll move on. Now it is time to get the rear number plate mount on, and obviously because these are big holes, you've got a washer that goes behind and a nut. So those two are bolted in, pushed right up so that these holes clear the stock bit. So now it's time to fit the tail light, and I went with the Lecter light that is supplied by Motone. Sold Out Motorcycles, when you buy this kit, they have a tie-in with Motone, so they provide their lights. And I just quite like the look of this one with the kind of grill on it. It's got a number plate light underneath and just two fixings on the back. There's an extra bolt, so you feed the wires through. Two nuts on the back, that is on there. Now it's time to wire these in. I've got incredibly long wires on these. I'm kind of a little bit loath to cut them because once you've cut them, that's it. And if I decide I want to relocate these maybe up here, then I don't want to do that. So I'll find another way of kind of routing those around and getting them tucked away. But I've got those to connect, and the tail light I have, he says looking for it, oh there it is. I have already knocked up a rear harness. It's just a Sumitomo 6-way plug at this end. And at the other end I've kind of messed around with the connectors, so I've got it kind of splits the negative. There's one single negative at this end, it splits it into three, so I've just put a three-way splitter in there. It's a bit untidy, but I will make another one of these once I know that it's working. And obviously now I've got this on here, I kind of know how long it needs to be, and it doesn't need to be anywhere near as long as the one that I've made, so I can rework this. But I'll connect that up just to make sure everything is working and show you what they look like. Okay, so this is a little bit of a Heath Robinson connection, but I just wanted to make sure of everything. So I've got this indicator and the tail light wired in. If I give it some power, there's the tail light, there's the brake light, and if I flick the indicator on, that's flashing maybe too quickly. I don't know if it needs some kind of resistor in, but obviously I haven't got them connected at the front, the LED, so I've got normal bulbs at the front, LEDs at the back. I guess once I do the front ones we'll work out whether that's working or not. But as you can see, that indicator is incredibly bright. Right, I've knocked up a little rear harness. Probably won't be the finished article, but I'm just trying to keep the wiring out of the way. So I've gone short for the indicators because they're on a long cable, if you remember from past. So I'm going to tuck those up where the ECU is, and then you've got the connection to the rear light at the back there. Nice and easy. So I'm going to get all this connected up and then rack on, seat on, job done. So 4 bolts through here with a nut on the back and a little spring washer to hold them. That gets the rear rack on. And then the last job is to take the rubber bungs out of the original seat, pop them into the holes on the base of the new seat, snap the seat on, and we're done. And I'll show you around the bike. Obviously also I've got a number plate to go on here, so I have ordered up a slightly smaller plate which I'm going to stick on there. I won't do that now. So I'll keep this quick because it is cold and blustery out here, but here is the finished article and I think it looks really smart. A real change to the back end without having to cut that frame rail. Just, it does look physically shorter. Obviously the front end needs to be changed up as well to match. I still haven't decided if I'm going to paint this black or not. I'll probably paint the number plate black so that matches in, but with the exception of a few changes, kind of that's the back end done. So I can now concentrate on the front. We're going to change the bars, I'm going to change this clock setup, the tank will get painted, particularly now with that scratch, and obviously mounts and indicators and stuff at the front. I'll leave links down in the description to all of these parts and prices and where you can get them, and yeah, let me know what you think. And that just leaves me to say thanks for watching. Until next time, take care, ride safe, and I'll see you soon. Bye.